What's going on, everybody? C4 here, and this has been one of the most difficult videos I've ever had to make, and I just said, screw it, I'm putting it out today. It is my post-combine mock draft 3.0, but I'm trying to get this out as soon as possible so that I can get your guys' feedback and start planning out the 32-team mock draft series, which is going to run over the upcoming month all the way up until the 2019 draft. But also, while we're doing this, like 3 different times. Yesterday was when a lot of like the franchise tags and all that stuff would be announced, and you got a lot of rumors and strong rumors about players that might be going somewhere, might be getting re-signed. That drastically changed my mock draft, and I've gone back and forth 5 or 6 different times. I said, screw it. This is what we're rocking and rolling with, and I'm going to try to back up everything, but ultimately, guys, this is probably the least important, I don't want to say least important, but the least serious mock draft, because ultimately I'm throwing out picks that I want to get your guys' feedback on so that I can use that as the framework for each individual 32-team mock. So I need to put it out there first and foremost that I am looking for your guys' feedback in the comments about this mock draft. So without further ado, we're jumping into pick number 1 with the Arizona Cardinals, and I had them selecting Kyler Murray. Now, do I think this is the best pick for the Arizona Cardinals? No, a mock draft is tough. I always try to go in the middle. You can either do a mock draft where you're drafting where you are the owner of the team, who you would pick, or you do a mock draft where you go where you're trying to predict what the team will actually select. I'm trying to go in the middle, and I don't think they should select Kyler Murray. I had Josh Rosen as my top quarterback last year, and I think he was given a really bad situation in Arizona to truly evaluate that. But the fact that all this rumbling and stuff about, like, will he stay, will he not stay, they're not saying the things that the Arizona Cardinals should be saying if Josh Rosen is their franchise quarterback. There's everyone just saying he's our QB for now and all this stuff. And if he was really your franchise quarterback, you would end that. But right now they're keeping this cloud, this mystery. And anytime you have a mystery and you're not giving a definitive answer, that means that you're trying to, like, leverage a little bit in a trade. So while I think it's absolutely ridiculous that they even gave Cliff Kingsbury the job in the first place, if he is your guy and you can recover some decent value for Josh Rosen, with teams understanding that you're paying all the guarantees still, Kyler Murray, I guess. Like, am I happy that I'm starting my mock draft off with Kyler Murray to the Cardinals? Not necessarily, but the more and more that this thing drags itself out, the more and more that the Cardinals aren't really saying the kind of things you say if you're absolutely certain that Josh Rosen, like, it's like, okay, for example, Philadelphia with Nick Foles and Carson Wentz. If Philadelphia was going to trade Carson Wentz, you see how they approached it. There was a chance, all these people, all the fan base trying to get them, and Philly would come out every single time and reassure you without a shadow of a doubt that Carson Wentz is the starter going forward. So that's just, no, it's not the same scenario, but it kind of is when you're talking about a young quarterback that could potentially, not from in-house but outside, be rumored to be going somewhere. Philadelphia reaffirmed their stance about Carson Wentz as their quarterback. You're just not seeing that with the Arizona Cardinals. And I will leave it you with this. If they do select Kyler Murray, clearly they should move on from Josh Rosen. And we all know this. This is how the New England Patriots are going to find a way to get Tom Brady's replacement. They will get Josh Rosen at a discounted price, have him sit behind Brady for a year or two, go the Aaron Rodgers, Brett Favre approach, and then it's just a bunch more years of annoying Patriots AFC dominance. Going on to pick number 2, we have the San Francisco 49ers. They are smiling ear to ear because they have a shot at pretty much anyone they want. And they select Nick Bosa, defensive end from Ohio State. Just makes a whole lot of sense. I mean, I've never really bought the Nick Bosa to the Cardinals as soon as the Cardinals, pretty much said they're moving to a 3-4 because Nick Bosa is not an outside linebacker, and he's about 30 pounds lighter than like any legitimate 3-4 defensive end in this league. So now we go to the 49ers. Now, this is almost like a bitter pill to swallow for the 49ers because it most likely means one of their former first-round picks on the defensive line is going to get cut or he's going to be on his way out. Unless, you find a way, let's be honest, it's probably Eric Armstead. Unless you find a way to get Eric Armstead to play in the interior there with DeForest and Buckner, you keep hoping that Solomon Thomas is going to develop as an edge rusher, and then you put Nick Bosa on that side. I mean, that's a huge investment on that defensive line, but without a shadow of a doubt, when you're looking at the 49ers, who I have predicted will be fairly active in free agency, I had them going and getting Earl Thomas and Mr. Antonio Brown. I mean, just getting a guy that can get after the quarterback, so your best interior rusher, is not DeForest Buckner. I mean, DeForest Buckner is a very good D tackle, but he should not be leading your team in sacks, or he at least should have some competition. I think a guy like Nick Bosa will severely improve the pass rush there for the San Francisco 49ers. Don't really need to go much deeper than that. This is such an easy pick for the Niners to make, and they are very, very happy with the disarray, the Chip Kelly-ness that's going on in Arizona right now, that they can get, what's regarded by some, we know my opinion, I think Ed Oliver's the best player in the draft, but was regarded by some, almost most, as the best player in the draft at pick number 2. Going to pick number 3, this was a tough one. This is something I'm going to look for Jet fans to give me their feedback. I have the New York Jets selecting Quinnen Williams, defensive end from Alabama. Now, when you look at Quinnen Williams, you see a perfect guy for a 4-3. I firmly believe he can play a 3-4 defensive end. We have found out that, we all thought the Jets were going to move to a 4-3, but Greg Willis has come out and saying we're going to stick in that 3-4. They looks like they extend, or they're going to extend Henry Anderson at defensive end. You have Leonard Williams. So from that standpoint, I was kind of thinking maybe they look at Josh Allen, get an outside linebacker, get an edge for that 3-4 that they're kind of been missing. But ultimately, I think there's just too much talent in Quinnen Williams to pass up if he's sitting there at 3-4 your scheme. Because even though you did get some good value and production out of Henry Anderson, he's not Quinnen Williams. And looking forward, you have a massive, massive salary with Leonard Williams coming. And if things don't work out there, you can probably let him walk if the contract situation, contract negotiations get ugly, because you have a guy like Quinnen Williams. So I think if you're trying to make the defense well-rounded, a guy like Josh Allen, defensive edge, he'd obviously be an outside linebacker from Kentucky, would be the play. But if you're just going simply best player available that will still present an upgrade, it's Quinnen Williams. So from a 3-4 standpoint, it definitely helps it out. I think it's a stronger draft if you are a base 3-4 defense than a 4-3, especially when you're talking about edge rushers. And if you do think Quinnen Williams can become that next Aaron Donald, I mean, hell, that's what Aaron Donald does. 3-4 defensive end there for the Rams, and you can get flexible if you start showing some multiple fronts, which maybe that's what Greg Williams is going to try to do. And a guy like Quinnen Williams will be able to handle all of those things as a rookie for the Jets. Moving to pick number 4, we have the Oakland Raiders, and I'm selecting Brian Burns, defensive end from Florida State. The biggest issue right now with the Raiders, it was almost a meme at this point. After trading Khalil Mack, you would have John Gruden going to the press conference and saying, we need an edge rusher. We need to get after the quarterback. And then, all fans across the world, especially Raider fans, just rolled their eyes. So when you have a pick within the top 5 and there is still some premier edge rushers available, you got to just smooth over that giant pothole in the road of your fan base that's been left there since Khalil Mack is gone. And I think, we have Brian Burns, we have Josh Allen here. I'm not going Josh Allen is a 3-4 player. He is going to be underutilized as a 4-3 end. He's not strong enough to be a 4-3 end right now. But a guy like Brian Burns coming in, who ripped up the combine, is without a doubt a 4-3 defensive end. So many people thought he would be a higher regarded talent if he was heavier, if he had more NFL traditional weight, because he was 225, 230 at Florida State. So what did he do? He came into the combine at 250 pounds and still dominated the skill drills. Like 4.53, was incredibly agile. He looked every bit the part of the best edge rusher in this year's draft class. And I think if there wasn't a Nick Bosa ahead of him, he probably would be the first edge rusher drafted and selected. I mean, I guess if you're counting Quinnen Williams as a 3-4 edge, then, to each their own. But from just a pure edge rush standpoint, he's just, the strength of the class has him still here for the Raiders, and he is a scheme fit for that 4-3 defense. A guy like, I've seen people have Quinnen Williams and Josh. They're not scheme fits. Josh Allen's a 3-4 outside linebacker. Quinnen Williams, if he is still here, he is a 3-technique defensive tackle, which they already have in Maurice Hurst. He's like the best young thing on their defense. You're not going to ruin that by bringing in the same type of player. So Brian Burns to the Raiders. I've put this on Twitter. I got a couple eye rolls, got a couple sighs. Trust me, it makes sense. It's what the Raiders are going to do. Going to pick number 5, we have the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and I have them selecting Josh Allen, edge rusher from Kentucky. We do know that with the appointment of Mr. Todd Bowles as the DC with Bruce Arians, they're going to be switching to a 3-4, which is a transitionary period for that defense. I originally had them going Devin White, and it now looks like Quan Alexander is going to be trying to work out a contract there, which they should. I think he's an underrated linebacker, and a Quan Alexander, Levante David interior of a 3-4 seems pretty promising. But when you look at the roster right now, you look at the front, they used to pick on Vita Vea, nose tackle. You have Jarrett McCoy, who some people thought was going to leave, but now it looks like he'll be returning as a defensive. I mean, like their front 7 from an inside out looks good, but what do you have on the edges? Nothing. JPP is not going to be able to convert to a defensive end. I mean, they got JPP from the Giants because the Giants were switching to a 3-4. So that's just kind of a unfortunate scenario there. So they desperately need edge rushers right now. And I think with Josh Allen being a scheme fit in a 3-4, he's a guy that has proven SEC production, tested very well at the combine, showed that he's a high-level athlete. But, what does that translate? I have watched probably as much Josh Allen tape as anyone because I've been on the Josh Allen hype train for quite some time. I watched Josh Allen play my Florida Gators, and he was covering tight ends and running backs out the backfield. He brings that little bit of Von Miller, where, yes, you're drafting him and your expectations is that he's going to be your double-digit sack guy every year. But usually when you get those guys in a 3-4 scheme, they're not really complete players. They're kind of one-dimensional. They can be exposed if you try to put, X amount of schemes around them if you're an offensive coordinator to target them in the passing game. But a guy like Josh Allen can drop back and cover tight ends. He can cover running backs out the backfield to an extent. So that versatility is a tremendous asset that he brings to his game, to a 3-4 scheme. And at pick number 5, a team like the Bucs that's a desperate need, it is a perfect fit. Going to pick number 6, we have the New York Giants, and I was selecting Dwayne Haskins, quarterback from Ohio State. He's kind of a boring pick, redundant pick at this point, but it makes complete sense. What we know about Dave Gettleman is, first of all, he's not a very good GM by letting Landon Collins walk, but have like $75 million of cap locked into Eli Manning, Olivier Vernon, who's not a scheme fit, Rhett Ellison, Nate Solder. Like, there's just abundance. Alec Ogletree, like an abundance of ugly contracts that you've proven time and time again you will overpay for less than ideal players. But then when it comes to maybe being a little bit of a tough decision with Landon Collins, you let him walk, but you overpay. You're unwilling to pay Landon Collins a fee that you're already paying Alec Ogletree. It doesn't make sense. Either way, Dave Gettleman is an old school type guy. He's come out and said multiple times during the draft process, analytics are dumb. He does not put positional value when it comes to drafting players. I'm excited that he's your GM as an Eagle fan. But ultimately, we do know he has this old school style of approach, and what's more old school than drafting a quarterback that's going to sit behind a veteran? We know Eli Manning's going to be the quarterback, and this is a perfect scenario. When you look at Dwayne Haskins, he's the kind of guy that the biggest knock really against him is that he's a one-year starter with Ohio State. So ideally, whatever team would go to the National Football League, he would be able to sit and wait and learn. And let's be honest, Eli Manning's probably a decent tutor. I mean, Eli Manning's not the greatest quarterback statistically, but he will be an asset in the development of Dwayne Haskins. The whole thought of, well, maybe the Giants will get their QB this year, they'll get one next year. I feel like the old school approach, the Gettleman approach, would be rather than clearly committing to Eli this year and not knowing what's going on and then having to maybe gamble and have that risk, the risk of going with a true freshman, I guess we could say, or true rookie quarterback next year. Get a guy like Dwayne Haskins who will come in as like a redshirt sophomore. He already goes the ins and outs. It's a far easier, less riskier transition, which is kind of what we've seen so far that a Dave Gettleman team wants. So perfect scenario, perfect landing spot for Dwayne Haskins. And then even comparing Dwayne Haskins, where would he rank if he stayed at Ohio State and came out next year? He probably would have a shot to be the second quarterback, maybe the third quarterback. Like, I think it's pretty much a lock that right now, obviously a lot can change during the college football season, that Justin Herbert's QB1. You would assume probably Tua's QB2. And then beyond that, you'd have Fromm. I think you'd have Dwayne Haskins, who might actually be able to push Tua for QB2. You have Jordan Love from Utah State. So I think ultimately Dwayne Haskins going to the Giants, sitting behind Eli, is the move to be made here for Gettleman and company. Moving to pick number 7, we have the Jacksonville Jaguars, and I think the Jags are going to get their quarterback in Nick Foles. I think they should get into a 2-3-year deal, front-load that contract so that next year they can get their quarterback, because right now with Haskins and Kyler Murray out the board, there's absolutely no quarterback that I would want over Nick Foles right now. No quarterback that I even think would be beneficial to sit behind Nick Foles. Wait until next year, go with Nick Foles, get him a weapon. And at number 7, they're getting DK Metcalf, the wide receiver from Ole Miss. Sure, there is some risk to this because DK Metcalf went to the combine, came off like a freak of nature. You've seen the workout pictures, but then when it came to the agility drills, which, not going to lie, if you're worth your grain of salt of studying this player, you know he was not going to test particularly well, but he tested really, really bad. But you know who else has tested pretty bad at the agility drills? Maybe not to the extent of DK, but within the realm. Des Bryant, Mike Evans. Oh, what are those guys? Oh, they're gigantic outside wide receivers that aren't really going to have to need a whole lot of shifting, a whole lot of change of direction, because that's not really their game. So I think that if you're an offensive staff that's worth their weight in salt, you're going to look at DK Metcalf and say the things that no player can really get trained on without taking some illegal Mexican supplements, he already has. So you take the understanding that you have this very coachable, very trainable ball of clay, and you can make him into a route runner. You can say, hey, maybe shave off 8 to 10 pounds, maybe do a little bit of yoga, become a little bit more flexible, and improve that just a little bit. But ultimately, you have one job to our offense, is to spread the field and just straight up be, I'm a better athlete than 90% of the DBs that I'm going to face in the National Football League. They not got to stop me. Get Nick Foles, that legitimate weapon. Pair that with a D.D. Westbrook, with a Keelan Cole, with that other dude. They got Marquise Lee's probably going to be a cap hit anyways. But DK Metcalf, the Jags desperately need an elite playmaker on the outside. And that is exactly what you get with DK Metcalf, as long as you're confident that you can develop him, which shouldn't be overly hard. It's a risky pick, but it's a pick that I think if you get Nick Foles, you're kind of stated in the league that, yes, we brought in this guy that won the Super Bowl a couple years ago because we think our roster is similarly talented to that Philadelphia Eagles team, that when you surround talent with Nick Foles, he's going to be able to at least carry your team into the playoffs. They need an outside player. They either need an outside player or a tight end. They could go tight end here, but I think DK Metcalf is pretty much the best of both worlds, and that is the pick. Go to pick number 8. We have the Detroit Lions, and I'm selecting T.J. Hawkinson, tight end from Iowa. This pick was fairly easy to make because when you look at the strength of the draft, there is like 3 legitimate first-round tight ends. A lot of people are regarding this as like one of the strongest tight end classes in quite some time. When you look at the Detroit Lions offense, they don't have a lot of balance because they haven't had a tight end really ever. The Eric Ebron experiment didn't work. Before that, they had like Ben Pettigrew. That didn't work out. But a guy like T.J. Hawkinson is pretty much as can't miss of a tight end prospect as you can get. He pretty much looks like the reincarnation of Rob Gronkowski. You have the Matt Patricia New England connection there. He probably has been looking for that Gronkowski outlet. Oh, wait a minute. Didn't they try to trade for Gronk last year? Wasn't that the big rumor? Well, this year at number 8, they have that opportunity to get a guy that is very Gronk-ish and could very well develop into the next Gronkowski. So there you go. Hawkinson to the Lions at 8. Pick number 9, we have the Buffalo Bills, and I'm selecting Ed Oliver, defensive tackle from Houston. Everyone knows my feelings on Mr. Ed Oliver. I think he's the top player in this draft. The Buffalo Bills should be laughing if he's still available there at number 9. Now, from the Bills, I think that the biggest thing, and I've already crowned the Buffalo Bills as my sleeper team this year. The last 2 years, I've picked teams that have failed to make the playoffs. 2 years ago was the Jags. They made that run. Last year was the Bears. They made that run. Unfortunately, ran into the Eagles and Nick Foles. And this year, I'm going the Bills. And I said the biggest thing for the Bills is to improve that offense, build it around Josh Allen. But still, when you're sitting here at 9 and the best player in the draft falls into your lap with the retirement of Kyle Williams, with the, do you really think Star Latuli's contract should hold up, or is Harrison Phillips going to develop? Either way, I firmly believe that with Ed Oliver on this team, in that front for the Buffalo Bills, Sean McDermott will find multiple ways to have him wreak havoc. One thing I do believe in Buffalo is that Sean McDermott is a very good defensive coach, and I think a guy like Ed Oliver will be maximized. Every single aspect of his game will be maximized under a guy like Sean McDermott. He takes over for Kyle Williams' role in the interior, and he is just a game wrecker. You can have him line up in different ways. I wouldn't, that whole, can Ed Oliver play linebacker stuff? I wouldn't be surprised if they have some sort of package. They can have Ed Oliver stand up and just literally terrify whatever guard or tackle or tight end they try to have him, or even a running back. Just imagine them trying to get a creative way where Ed Oliver's lined up and the only people blocking him is a running back. Good night. So I think for the Buffalo Bills, Ed Oliver, home run at pick number 9. And then use the rest of the draft to build up weapons around Josh Allen. I think they will be somewhat active in free agency. Like I had, I think Golden Tate projected to go to the Buffalo Bills. Maybe Tevin Coleman could be an option. Roger Saffold, the guard from the Rams. I think they will be active. I think the Buffalo Bills realize that they now have their quarterback. So it's time. You don't have to keep waiting. You don't have to keep in this rebuild phase. It is time to make a push for the playoffs. And I think they're going to be active. They have a lot of salary that they can spend. And then you just throw in an Ed Oliver in the first round. I'm liking the Bills as my sleeper team next season. And then, like I said, second, third, fourth round, start building up that offense. Keep adding more youthful weapons for Josh Allen. Pick number 10, we have the Denver Broncos. I'm selecting Greedy Williams, cornerback from LSU. When you look at the Denver Broncos, I think at this point, people would be maybe close to saying pull the trigger on a Drew Lock or something like that. But I think with the move of Joe Flacco, LA will be looking more towards next year to get in the quarterback, or maybe hoping that a Drew Lock slips and they'll have an opportunity to get him on the swing around in the second round. I just feel like right now there's far too many holes for the Denver Broncos to waste another first-round pick on a quarterback that might not work out. But a guy like Greedy Williams comes into a secondary, very similar style player to what they had in Aqib Talib. I mean, the biggest knock right now against Greedy Williams is that he doesn't offer much in run support, but, you know, I kind of feel like Denver values more so you being able to lock down the other team's wide receiver one, and that's exactly what Greedy Williams, I think, can do better than any player in this draft, just slightly ahead of Byron Murphy from Washington. A guy like Greedy Williams already pairs nicely with the nickel that they have there in Chris Harris. I think it's going to be slightly changing the guard here in Denver, but when you look at Vic Fangio, a guy like Greedy Williams, that shutdown corner, is something that he hasn't really had from a skill set standpoint. He's had smaller corners that he's made work, like Fuller and like Mukamara and stuff like that, but a guy like Greedy Williams, I think a guy like Vic Fangio will be pounding the table saying, get me this guy. He will help transition my defense. I mean, I had a prediction that the Broncos could be looking at like an Adrian Amos, bringing him over as well at the safety to help them out, but just getting a lot more athletic for the Denver Broncos in the secondary should be a top priority, I think more so than reaching for a quarterback here at pick number 10. Therefore, Greedy Williams to Denver is a huge get for that defense, and I think would be almost as successful as the selection that they had last year, getting Bradley Chubb. Going to pick number 11, we have the Cincinnati Bengals, where they are very, very excited to just run up and hand in the little draft card that says they're selecting Devin White, linebacker from LSU. We know the Cincinnati Bengals have some issues. They have some team needs. I think that you can look at maybe anywhere on the offensive line at this point. There's still a lot of big names, but with the fact of Devin White still being here, the best linebacker in the draft, and seeing the success last year that linebackers were able to bring to their team as rookies, Leighton Vander Esch, Roquan Smith, Tremaine Edmonds, it just makes complete sense. With the uncertainty of Vontaze Burfict right now, I think this is the right pick, and I'm not exactly 100% confident because they got Zach Taylor. They got an offensive guy, and maybe he's going to want to bring in some more offensive weapons to better utilize his scheme that they might be missing. But I would think right now, if Devin White is still on the board at pick number 11 and Cincinnati doesn't get him, that will be looked back upon as a mistake. But there still are pretty much every offensive line prospect available, so I don't necessarily know they can go wrong at pick number 11 by passing on Devin White. But I just think for what this team needs, Devin White is a future, I would think, all-pro type player, whereas some of the guys in the offensive line may be less clear about what their future could hold from a ceiling standpoint. And a guy like Devin White will transition that defense. He'll be the new leader of that defense. And hell, it doesn't really matter what other linebackers you put with him. I think Devin White, you look at maybe Malik Jefferson, and you get Vontaze Burfict. That is day and night better, hoping that Malik Jefferson does develop, day and night better than the linebacking core they had last season. Going to pick number 12, we have the Green Bay Packers. This is their first of two first-round picks. I'm selecting Montez Sweat, edge rusher from Mississippi State. Don't think any player really improved their draft stock more so than Montez Sweat, coming in at 6'6", 260 pounds, 4'4", 140. And unlike maybe, say, DK Metcalf, where Metcalf was really, really fast and then not so agile during the drills, Montez Sweat blew the absolute doors out the rest of the testing drills. Home run. He was a home run. And it's not like he was a guy that was regarded as like a second or third round pick and then now is getting this first round overhype. He was regarded about this range, maybe just slightly below, because what we saw was SEC sack production. We talked about it with Josh Allen. It was pretty much the same there with Montez Sweat. He was proven. He's not a one-year wonder. And what we saw at the Senior Bowl was he can set the edge. He can do a lot of the ugly things that, traditional flashy speedster one-dimensional edge rushers can't do. Montez Sweat can affect the run almost as well as he can affect the pass. And I think when you're the Green Bay Packers, you're trying to get younger on edge rusher. You might have got burned with the Nick Perry contract. Doesn't seem like he's panning out, but you will be most likely, and by most likely I mean like 99%, moving on from Clay Matthews. A guy like Montez Sweat can fill in that void right away and give you a lot of production as a rookie. Going to pick number 13, we have the Miami Dolphins, and I'm selecting Rashawn Gary, edge rusher from Michigan. Now, Dolphins, this is a tricky pick because of the quarterback and stuff like that. I just don't think they're going to be taking a high investment in a QB in Brian Flores' first year. That's just unneeded stress, unneeded expectations that could be met. So I just think they're telling them, go best player available. Get the best players that are going to help you in your first year. I think they'll get a veteran. I think Teddy Bridgewater makes a lot of sense. You could actually, even if you get a Teddy Bridgewater, you might actually get your quarterback of the future if he can, finally hit the ground running with his career, which a lot of people think he could. So then when you're looking at best player available, I mean, Rashawn Gary is a perfect fit for Bill Belichick defense, therefore will be a perfect fit for what Brian Flores is going to want. It seems like, by all accounts, he's going to be running a multiple front defense. I've seen a lot of people say 4-3, 3-4, but let's be honest, it's probably to look somewhat similar to what Matt Patricia has done with the Detroit Lions. And a guy like Rashawn Gary is a perfect fit for that defense. Rashawn Gary was absolutely dominant at the combine as expected. I would think, freak athlete, especially myself. I've been guilty calling a lot of people that. Rashawn Gary is absolutely one of these freak athletes, and he's a guy that, it's a position in need. It looks like Cam Wake's probably moving on. They got rid of Andre Branch. Hopefully you can get Nope, that's not it. Charles Harris. Hopefully you can get Charles Harris to develop a little bit. But a guy like Rashawn Gary can play inside, he can play outside. Just an incredibly versatile piece for Brian Flores to help establish his defensive identity immediately with the Miami Dolphins. Going to pick number 14, we have the Atlanta Falcons, and I'm selecting Cody Ford, guard from Oklahoma. He's pretty much an offensive lineman. A lot of people are kind of split as to is he a guard, is he a tackle? Either way, very good pick for the Falcons, because I think short term, they need a guard. They need an upgrade on guard at the offensive line. So you could start there, day one. You got Ryan Schrader, who's been kind of inconsistent up and down as a tackle. Cody Ford could also probably play right tackle. So there's some more competition there. I know a lot of people think that they could go D tackle. That's kind of like the popular pick here, interior of the defensive line. But they tagged Grady Jarrett. They used a third-round pick last year in Sanat. I feel like that is the investment. They're not going to invest another first-round pick to that spot. But when you look at their offensive line, it can get better. They're not going to have as balanced, as elite of a rushing attack. So making that offensive line is going to make it that much more easier for Mr. Freeman, for Ito Smith, to continue on and have that balance that has been so successful for the Atlanta Falcons offense. So I think Cody Ford, who is, again, one of those guys that I think you could probably put the very low bust potential tag on, he's going to be an upgrade, a starter day one for the Atlanta Falcons in the interior of that offensive line. Going to pick number 15, we have the Washington Redskins, and I was selecting Byron Murphy, cornerback from Washington. This is a spot that I was actually kind of shocked. When you look at the Washington Redskins, you look around the internet, people trying to tell you, like, what do the Redskins need? What do they not need? What do they need to get? You see wide receiver, but I don't really think at 15, I think the strength of the draft for wide receivers is going to be second and third round. That's where they're going to get one. Then you look at, like, interior offensive line, like, yeah, they could. They could. I mean, Garrett Bradbury at center, but they have Chase Roulier is not bad. Like, you can look at maybe some guards, yeah, I guess, or safety. But I think, like wide receiver, safety, the strength of the safeties right now are going to be, because look, we're still, how many safeties have gone? None at this point. So, like, there's going to be some good safeties still there in the second round. And the same with, like, edge rushers. Who's a 3-4 edge rusher that's still available right now that's a fit for this team? Like, Ja'Kai Polite, and there's reports that he bombed his interviews and has hurt himself with the... You know what? Ja'Kai Polite actually sounds like the kind of guy that the Redskins would draft here. But I think ultimately Byron Murphy. You look at the secondary. If I had to look at one big potential cap casualty, it would be Josh Norman, getting him out the books. And then what else do they have there outside of corner? They got Dunbar, who's been all right from Florida. They got Fabian Moreau, who's been meh. You got Greg Stroman was a role player, but ultimately there's not a lot there right now at corner beyond Josh Norman, and who I think's future is kind of shaky, kind of up in the air. So I think a guy like Byron Murphy, who some people regard as the top corner in this year's draft class, it's not a reach. It's not a surprise pick. He would be able to come in, I think, and compete with Fabian Moreau to be that other outside starting corner with Josh Norman. And it gives you that flexibility that if you want to move on from Josh Norman, let's be honest, hasn't really lived up to the big contract they gave him, you have that player that can take over, that guy that has the potential, that has the ceiling to be a lockdown franchise corner. So I think at this point, there's some areas they could go. Like I said, safety would be intriguing. They maybe could look at a wide receiver like N'Keal Harry at this point. But I think with Byron Murphy debatably being the best corner in the draft, still on the board at pick 15, I think that's too much value for the Redskins to pass up. Now, it is feeling a little bit weird not having them go with an Alabama player right away, but maybe times are changing for the Redskins. Going to pick number 16, we have the Carolina Panthers, and I originally had them going Garrett Bradbury, the center from NC State, because Ryan Khalil retired, but more so than the offensive line, I think edge rusher is the biggest need. So I have them selecting Clelin Ferrell, edge rusher from Clemson. I think pretty good value here. He's a legitimate talent. I think maybe because of the strength of the draft, he's still on the board at this point, whereas there's another year, might be closer to a top 10. But when you look at the defensive ends right now for the Carolina Panthers, you have Mary Addison, who's still productive, but also getting pretty old. And then beyond that, there's not much. Julius Peppers retired. That's it. Yeah, Brian Cox. Like, you just have a bunch of role players. So a guy like Clelin Ferrell will be able to come in. I think, anytime in the first round, you get a guy that slipped a little bit, but will be able to come in and play and give you productive minutes as a rookie, and probably most likely establish himself as a full-time starter by the end of training camp. You kind of need it. And when it's as big of a position of need as edge rusher is for the Carolina Panthers, I think that is, a very easy pick for the Panthers to make if Farrell is still on the board at 16. Going to pick number 17, we have the Cleveland Browns, and I'm selecting DeAndre Baker, cornerback from Georgia. Browns did an exceptional job drafting last year, and they got a very good corner in the first round in Denzel Ward. Continue to finish your secondary. Outside of Denzel Ward, not much. Terrence Mitchell, Travis Carey, who's all right, and then other than that, just a bunch of guys. You look at this defense, you want them to go to the next level. You have Steve Wilkes here, so you got a somewhat experienced DC from maybe not so much what he did with Arizona, but what he did with Carolina. And I think a guy like DeAndre Baker fits what they're trying to build in that defense. He is a very aggressive corner, tested better than most people expected at the scouting combine. I think right away expectations would be to have him start right outside as a rookie with Denzel Ward. You take Carey and you put him in the slot, and then you have Denzel Ward on one side, you have DeAndre Baker on the other. If those guys develop together, you very well, with the emergence of Jabril Peppers finally playing the correct position, you very well could have one of the scariest young secondaries in football. I think when you have a team right now with the Cleveland Browns that in reality doesn't have a whole lot of holes that need to be immediately addressed in the first round. I mean, there's some intriguing prospects on the offensive line, but they seem to be committed with Hubbard, who they give a big contract from the Steelers, and Greg Robinson, who they get a new contract. I personally would move on from them and maybe grab a tackle here. But hey, DeAndre Baker, really, really good corner, fundamentally sound, and I think the prospect of him, Denzel Ward, Jabril Peppers going forward for the foreseeable future for this Browns secondary, that is incredibly enticing if you are a Cleveland Browns fan. Going to pick number 18, we have the Minnesota Vikings, and I was selecting Jonah Williams, offensive lineman from Alabama. Now we make the distinction offensive lineman. He kind of came out and said he wants to play tackle, but clearly has an ideal skill set for guard. Either way, at this point in time, the Minnesota Vikings need the best offensive lineman available because it's without a doubt the glaring need. I think a guy like Jonah Williams could come in and pretty much start anywhere on that line. If you think he can play tackle, bump Remmers. He can bump what's his name? Riley Reef. I mean, you're going to hope that, Brian O'Neill can emerge as your right tackle. So, he can play left tackle, or he can play at any of the guard spots. I think the flexibility that you get with Jonah Williams, the fact that he's very, very low bust potential on the offensive line, like they need to hit on an offensive lineman at 18, and there is no better opportunity of that happening than selecting Jonah Williams from Alabama. Going to pick number 19, we have the Tennessee Titans, and it's not a sexy pick, but it's a safe pick that makes a lot of sense. I'm selecting Chris Lindstrom, offensive guard from Boston College. Pretty much established himself at the combine as a first-round talent. He was coming in as a first round, but he looked very, very good in the drills from an athletic standpoint, tested incredibly well. And you look at the Titans, again, a team that doesn't have a lot of holes. Sure, they might want to look for maybe another wide receiver to pair with Corey Davis, but I don't think there's really one available at this point. And I refer you back to the fact that I think second, third, fourth rounds were the strength to get a wide receiver at. So they have Quentin Spain that's set at free agency. Josh Klein's up there in age a little bit. So I just think the interior of their offensive line could be improved. I mean, Garrett Bradbury could be an option at center, but I think Ben Jones is good enough right now to hold on to his job. So I'm just looking more so in the interior. Chris Lindstrom, you don't have to pay Quentin Spain. You have Chris Lindstrom plug and play right away at left guard. And then you can, work on getting some edge rushers or work on completing your defense and maybe adding a wide receiver in the second, third, and fourth round. Going to pick number 20, we have the Pittsburgh Steelers. I'm selecting Amani Oruwariye, corner from Penn State. Just a prototypical Pittsburgh Steelers zone defense corner. They are going to get a lot better very, very quickly. I mean, you look at the Steelers, I think biggest area of concern, even more so I think than linebacker, will be fixing that secondary. Artie Burns, what's going on with that guy? You have Joe Hayden, who's pretty nice, but he's getting up there in age. You got Mike Hilton, who's a decent nickel corner, but you need to get a guy that can shut guys down. There's too many times that secondary for the Pittsburgh Steelers was letting them down. And I think a guy like Amani Oruwariye, who is a prototypical Pittsburgh Steeler corner, who pretty much solidified himself as a first-round talent at the scouting combine. Big, long, rangy corner, running in the high 4.4s, where some people thought he could run high 4.5s, low 4.6s, something like that, which is traditional of those long, rangy, not necessarily twitchy corners. He's played himself into first-round pick territory, and I think for how great of a fit he is for the Pittsburgh Steelers, I think they will select him very quickly if he's still there at pick number 20, which he should be. Going to pick number 21 with the Seattle Seahawks, and I have them selecting, now this is a little bit of a homer pick, but it seems like most draft sites right now are coming along to what I've been saying for 3 goddamn months now. The best safety in this class, and the pick here at 21 for the Seattle Seahawks is Chauncey Gardner-Johnson from Florida. Seattle is losing Earl Thomas, and they kind of have some guys on the roster that seem like they've Delano Hill's been a decent investment. They got a couple other guys that they've used, mid-round picks on. I don't think any of those guys are going to be a success. But I think a guy like Chauncey Gardner-Johnson, who tested well at the combine to solidify his draft stock as a first rounder. And then when you look at the tape, Chauncey Gardner-Johnson was one of the best true sophomore corners for the Florida Gators, one of the best true sophomore corners in the country, in all of college. He had to move to free safety, not because he was limited or reaching his ceiling as a corner. He had to move to safety just out of pure desperation for the Florida Gators defense. Played it as a pretty good level as a sophomore, maybe not elite, but good. And then in year 3, last year as a junior, just took it over. Played safety, played money backer, was the leader of this defense, showed off great tackling ability, sideline to sideline. He has those cornerback traits. He is everything you need for a center fielder that also can come up and affect the run in the Bucs. Doesn't that sound kind of familiar? Doesn't that kind of sound like that's exactly what Earl Thomas brought to the defense? Now, I'm not going to be standing on a table because that would be incredibly biased saying that Chauncey Gardner-Johnson's the next Earl Thomas, this or that. But what I am saying is what Earl Thomas brought to that defense, they currently do not have. I don't think they have the means to acquire a player like that can bring that back in via free agency. So I think Chauncey Gardner-Johnson through the draft is the easiest way to get that Earl Thomas-like player back in that defense. And I'll always pound the table for my Florida Gator guys. Chauncey Gardner-Johnson, best safety in the class, extreme versatility. Hey, you can't re-sign KJ Wright? Let me tell you that if you don't want to play, Shaquem Griffin out there, Chauncey Gardner-Johnson can play linebacker as that, the hybrid nickel linebacker, just as good as any player in this year's draft class. So incredible versatility that I think will be a perfect fit for Seattle's defense. Going to pick number 22, we have the Baltimore Ravens, and I'm selecting Garrett Bradbury, center from NC State. Now, you could look at wide receiver N'Keal Harry still on the board, but again, we refer to the fact that Baltimore usually won't reach for a player if the strength of the draft is there. I think Baltimore will be perfectly comfortable waiting to the second or third round, getting a wide receiver there, improving their offense, getting weapons for Lamar Jackson. But now it's time to get the most important weapon for Lamar Jackson. If he is your weapon, you want a strong offensive line. You don't want him running with reckless abandon because his offensive line can't hold up, which has kind of been a little bit of the issue they've had. They've had good run blocking for the most part in Baltimore, but their pass blocking has been lacking. If you build up that offensive line, you will have Lamar Jackson running with purpose versus running because he's running for his life kind of scenario, right? And then you look at the line, like Matt Score is like as bang on below average center as you can get. So a guy like Garrett Bradbury, an immediate upgrade to that offensive line, to everything that they're going to be trying to do. And then for the Baltimore Ravens, you look towards the second, third, and fourth round, where I'm assuming they're probably going to draft 5 more tight ends. But in reality, you can get your wide receiver, you get your running back, you can fill out that offensive line, get weapons, need it. You could start, you could start looking for Eric Weddle's replacement because you got rid of him. There's going to be safety still available. So I think you go with Garrett Bradbury, you build your line, you complete your line, probably, and then you can work on filling in the other spots later. Want to pick number 23 with the Houston Texans, where again, they are very, very happy with this selection. They select Jawan Taylor, tackle from Florida, regarded as maybe the best tackle in this class. Even as a Gator fan, I'm a little bit skeptical of that. I think he's absolutely a first-round talent, but I've seen enough inconsistencies that I could say he is a first-round, but middle to later first-round prospect. And when you are the Houston Texans, you absolutely have to go best offensive lineman available. We all know how much and historically Deshaun Watson was sacked last year. You look at that offensive line, there's not a lot of redeeming qualities in any of the players. So you get a guy like Jawan Taylor that has that flexibility that I think as a rookie walks in to that training camp and he's like, do you want to start at left or right tackle? That is what I would say to him if I'm Bill O'Brien. So yeah, easy home run pick here for the Texans. Going to pick number 24, we have the Oakland Raiders back on the clock with their second pick. And I was selecting N'Keal Harry, wide receiver from Arizona State. When you're the Raiders, you have so many holes. You already got your edge rusher, fine. Now you still can look in the secondary corner. You can look at getting a safety partner for Kyle Joseph. You can look at getting a linebacker. You can look at getting younger at tackle. You can look tight end. There's so many areas that they could go. I just feel at this point in time, getting another playmaker for Mr. Carr is paramount. I feel like they are going to lose out on the Antonio Brown sweepstakes. Obviously, it looks like AB is going to try to get traded tomorrow, I think, Friday. So that this could change the mock draft just a little bit, because obviously they get an AB. I don't think they're going to use a first-round pick on N'Keal Harry. But until then, they just, they came out and said before the draft that Marcel Aitman, who's an all-right prospect, is like their best wide receiver. I mean, that's maybe throwing a little bit of shade at Jordy Nelson, but you need to get a lot better. N'Keal Harry, I don't think he hurt his draft stock as much as people are thinking. He still has that trait that I've been saying all along. If he's covered, he's still open. He's still going to bring that to the next level and it's about time to get Derek Carr a weapon, especially if you're going to let Jared Cook walk, who is definitely Derek Carr's favorite weapon. Get him a nice, pretty bust-proof, I think, corner. I think N'Keal Harry is like his ceiling's obviously being an elite wide receiver. I think his floor is still a good wide receiver too. Kind of similar to how I viewed Mike Williams from Clemson a couple years ago, and that's kind of what he's brought to the Chargers. So, yeah, N'Keal Harry to the Raiders, get them some outside presence. Going to pick number 25 with the Philadelphia Eagles, and I'm selecting Christian Wilkins, defensive tackle from Clemson. Now, with the Philadelphia Eagles, we knew they let Timmy Jernigan walk, so we have a massive hole in the interior of the defensive line. I think they let Timmy Jernigan walk because when Timmy Jernigan was on the field, he was really, really good with Fletcher Cox, is because they do believe that they will be able to get a D tackle that they like at 25, and I'm very happy. This is a very good pick for my Philadelphia Eagles. I think Christian Wilkins is incredibly balanced, high character, high production, fits the mold of a prototypical Philadelphia Eagle pick, especially a first-round pick now, like the new era that we're having. So, and he's a guy that can start right away as a rookie. I think that's paramount for me because right now you'll have people saying that the Philadelphia Eagles should get, Jeffrey Simmons and kind of redshirt him like we've done with maybe Sidney Jones 2 years ago. I'm sick and tired of the Philadelphia Eagles using their high picks on players that they don't expect to play right away. Dallas Goedert didn't play until like the second half of the season. Year before that, they took the easy approach with Derek Barnett, and we had the redshirt year where we didn't have Sidney Jones available, and then the year before that, they kind of did it with Carson Wentz, where, hey, Carson Wentz going to sit behind Sam Bradford. Obviously, it didn't work out that way, but that was the idea. So if you get a guy like Jeffrey Simmons, sure, he's a top 10 talent, still slipping because of injury, but he's not going to play. He's probably not going to play at all his rookie season. It's about time that we get some guys that can play right away. And a guy like Christian Wilkins might not be there still at 25. I mean, I wouldn't be shocked, but I'd probably say I might be a little surprised if he's still there at 25. But how this board worked out, Christian Wilkins, day one starter, right along Fletcher Cox there in the interior of the defensive line. Going to pick number 26 with the Indianapolis Colts, and I have them selecting A.J. Brown, wide receiver from Ole Miss. Now, A.J. Brown, before this whole draft process started going into the college football season, was regarded as a top wide receiver in the class, and then it became a lot of people concerned about his ability to get separation. Is he going to be pigeonholed as a slot wide receiver? I think when you're looking at it from a Colts standpoint, they need a slot, so if that's always going to be a high-level slot player, big plus. But then he showed at the combine like that 4.47 speed. He showed the get off that wasn't really showing up on tape. So there's now newfound optimism that, hey, he could also be an outside wide receiver. But when you look at it from a Colts standpoint, they are a well-built roster. They have a lot of money to help improve their team and fill in some holes via free agency. Like, they could be active to fill out their secondary, like get another safety, get a corner, maybe look at a D-line. Like I said, Ronald Darby, Landon Collins. They could look at Sheldon Richardson. Like, these are all players that would make sense for the Colts, and they can afford to go get. But when I look at what's the weakness, what's the one area that I don't think the Colts can throw money at and fix in free agency, I think wide receiver. So when you look at a guy like A.J. Brown that has skills and traits and the technical ability of a first-round player, but kind of was slipping a little bit because people questioned his athleticism. Now it's not as good as some of the other players that have gone ahead of him. I don't think, personally, I rate him higher than N'Keal Harry or, obviously, DK Metcalf. But I do think right now A.J. Brown is a legitimate first-round receiver that showed everyone that he is a lot more athletic than we gave him credit for. And I think ultimately getting Andrew Luck another weapon on the outside or even on the inside, just someone else that's not just T.Y. Hilton or Eric Ebron in the red zone, will be the most beneficial here at pick 26 for the Colts. And what they're going to probably hope is a Super Bowl push next season. Going to pick number 27, we are back with the third pick for the Raiders, and I was selecting Devin Bush Jr., linebacker from Michigan. It's about time the Raiders finally draft a linebacker in the first round. Their linebacking play has been incredibly subpar for the last 6 years. It feels like they haven't had a good linebacker since Rolando McClain. And then think about that. Just think about that for a second. Rolando McClain, he was the Raiders' best linebacker when iPod was brand new, when iPods were just coming out. You look at a guy like Devin Bush, dominate the combine, pretty much alleviated all size concerns because he can jump out the park. You're not going to try to pick on him because he's short, because he had a 40-some inch vertical, which was ridiculous. He is your Gruden grinder mold guy, I think, as well. And he's a guy that brings a lot of those intangibles. I think that's what John Gruden wants to invest in his defense. So I think if you are the Raiders, there's plenty of spots they could go. You got safety. Nasir Adderley would be an interesting spot. Still some tackles. You could look at trying to bring in a right tackle to complement Colton Miller, which was your pick last year. Tight ends, you can still maybe grab a Noah Fant still on the board. If you don't have Jared Cook, Noah Fant would be an excellent pick here at 27. But I think ultimately defense and filling out that linebacking spot is paramount, more so than any other spot right now for the Raiders. I think a guy like Devin Bush comes in right away, can start, and helps change that image of the Raiders defense that has been kind of down, more so, kind of been down over the last 3-4 years, but more so since Khalil Mack left. You bring in, it's oh my God, we got rid of Khalil Mack, this and that. And then you come with the optimism of we got Brian Burns and Devin Bush on this defense. There's that newfound optimism. And again, kind of like what I said with Devin Bush, what we talked about with Devin White going at pick number 11 to the Bengals. We saw the success of what these really talented middle linebackers were able to bring last year for their defense, and I think Devin Bush is right in that category for the impact he can bring for the Raiders. Going to pick number 28, we have the LA Chargers, and I was selecting Dexter Lawrence, defensive tackle, nose tackle from Clemson. When you look at the Chargers, not a whole lot of holes. They could go offensive line here. I've mocked them going offensive line the last couple of years, and they kind of, to an extent, have slapped me in the face. You know, like the Seattle Seahawks. I mocked them an offensive lineman every year. They never do it. So I'm not doing it again this year. But you look at the Chargers, they need that nose tackle presence. Meebane's going to walk. They don't have a guy that can step in. There's some inconsistencies with Corey. We always pronounce him this way because we're Canadian. Corey Lugier. So just there's some questions about the interior of that defensive line. I think a guy like Dexter Lawrence, who had some off the field with the failed drug test and how much value can you put on a run-stuffing D tackle. I think he's much more than a run-stuffing D tackle, to be personally honest with you. I think kind of falls into DK Metcalf territory. I think you look at a guy like Dexter Lawrence, 340 pounds, put up the highest bench press at the combine for defensive players, almost ran a sub 540 at 340. Like, he's a freak of nature, and I think kind of like DK Metcalf, if you think you can develop the techniques that are going to be required to get him to be a little bit more effective as a pass watcher, which, I mean, from all accounts, the Chargers have done very well in developing their defensive players. This makes a whole lot of sense because he's a day one starter, and not too often you have a defense that is as highly regarded as the Chargers, and you get a guy that walks in and starts on your defense in the bottom end of the first round. Going to pick number 29 with the Kansas City Chiefs, and I'm selecting Nasir Adderley, safety from Delaware. He's going to fit right in, right next to Eric Berry, I think. You'll find a way to get him on the field. You still have Watts as well, who they got from Texas A&M. That's just better. I mean, more and more teams play with three safeties on the field because you have that money hybrid linebacker stuff. And they are switching to a 4-3, so they're going to get more similar concepts like that in Steve Spagnuolo's defense. But a guy like Nasir Adderley brings coverage ability as well. He brings that corner background so that he's, they just need to get help. And I think at 29 they could maybe reach for a corner. This was where I had to change my mock draft a little bit because I find that the Chiefs reach every year in the draft with players. Like, we disagree. They always get guys that most people aren't considered consensus first-round picks. So I think someone like Rocky Sin from Temple, I had him originally here, but I think ultimately the best value. And I mean, from all reports right now on social media, the Chiefs are trying to see if they can find a way to get some of these big-name safety free agents. I don't necessarily know they're going to have the cap for that. So I think a guy like Nasir Adderley at 29, he's a legit probably top 20 talent, so he's slipping just a little bit, but he comes in and can learn right away, play right away. One of the best safeties in the game in Eric Berry, makes that defense immediately better, and then you hopefully come around at the second round and grab another corner. Going to pick number 30, we have the Green Bay Packers, and I'm selecting Noah Fant, tight end from Iowa. Now, I'm personally, I don't, has there been any rumors that Jimmy Graham's leaving? I know every Packer fan wants a tight end. That's why I'm giving you one right now. But it just, get rid of Jimmy Graham. Why is he still on the roster if you're clearly, dead set on bringing in another tight end? So, either way, even with Jimmy Graham on the roster, more teams. Look at my Philadelphia Eagles. Obviously, you've seen teams in the past do it, like the Patriots. 2 tight ends works. Noah Fant is an electrifying player. He's pretty much a glorified wide receiver at tight end. So, there is a way that he will play slot. You just be creative with him, move him all over the field. LaFleur will find a way to utilize him. He's just a tremendous weapon to have on that offense, and it makes even more sense if they inevitably, which it seems like, get rid of Jimmy Graham. But he's an electrifying weapon for Mr. Aaron Rodgers. We don't need to dive in too much into it. Packer fans want a tight end. It makes more sense to me as a non-Packer fan if they get rid of Jimmy Graham, which seems like that will happen. But even if you do keep Jimmy Graham, he still is that prolific of a receiving weapon that 4-5, they'll find a way to utilize him, and he is a huge get for that Packers offense. Go to pick number 31, we have the LA Rams, and I'm selecting Ja'Kai Polite, edge rusher from Florida, slipping a little bit. All reports is that he tanked the combine, didn't look particularly good in the drills, added a couple pounds, didn't look like it helped him up a whole lot. And a lot of reports are saying, along with Kyler Murray, he had some of the ugliest interviews around the league. But I think, that loss, the fact that, I had him going, between 13 and 20 in that range is going to be the gain of the Rams, who need an edge rusher. They're going to be losing Dante Fowler. You got Ebukam, who seems like he's developing pretty nicely, but you just need to improve that linebacking core, be it inside or outside. I think with Devin Bush going off the board, they're sitting here at 31. You got maybe Mack Wilson could be an option. You could maybe reach a little bit for Be a Voshan Joseph. I know Blake Cashman from Minnesota is rising a lot right now. But I think Jachai Polite presents tremendous value at this point here for the Rams. I think Jachai Polite is a movable piece, a Swiss Army knife. He'll be able to find a way to get creative with them. And obviously, anyone that plays outside linebacker as an edge for the Rams is going to benefit from having Aaron Donald in front of him. So I think from the Rams, they kind of leap at the opportunity of a really talented player slipping that also just happens to be at a position of need. And then finish the draft at pick 32. It's like the most Patriot pick that I think they could make, and it makes a lot of sense. It's a position that I've been saying that they need to get. With the great uncertainty about Rob Gronkowski returning or not, I have the Patriots finishing out the first round by selecting Irv Smith Jr., the tight end from Alabama. I think the Patriots might be a little bit pissed off that at this point they didn't get Jachai Polite, because I think Jachai Polite is the pick if the Rams don't get him. But we know Bill Belichick loves his goddamn Crimson Tide. They're like the same goddamn thing. Just one's in college, one's in the pros. But Irv Smith is a really nice weapon at tight end. He fits that kind of like, he's not a traditional tight end. Like he's just under 6'3", 240, a little bit smaller. But those are the kind of picks that the Patriots make. They get these guys that might not be traditional, and they find a way to utilize, like, make them a monster. So I think even if Gronk comes back, he's that second tight end that they've been lacking, because I think they just released like Dwayne Allen and stuff like that. They kind of gave up on that experiment. So I think Irv Smith, from a lot of standpoints, makes a lot of sense to the Patriots. He's a traditional Patriot pick. He would fill a need, especially if Gronkowski retires. And even if Gronkowski doesn't retire, his availability has been scarce for the last couple of years. Irv Smith will get a lot of looks and reps as a rookie. So there you go, guys. That is my mock draft 3.0. As I stated, it's very, very important that I get your guys' feedback, because this is kind of how I'm going to use the framework for my 32-team mocks. Those will start kind of after the first couple of days of free agency, which hopefully gives us a little bit more clarity to team needs and stuff like that. And obviously, we took a gamble by taking Kyler Murray in the first round, but I don't know, man. I just feel like the writing's on the wall. I don't know why they would do that. Like, I personally would never do this whole Kyler Murray, get rid of Rosen thing, but I don't know. So let me know what you guys think in the comment section. If you're a fan of every team, try your best. It'd be most helpful if you kind of go off my mock and say, like, if I had you're a Bills fan, you don't want them getting Ed Oliver. Try to say players that haven't been selected yet would be the ideal fit. Like, that would help me out a little bit more in being a constructive criticizer. But thank you guys for watching the mock draft. As always, if it's your first time stopping by, don't be afraid to hit that subscribe button, smash the like button if you enjoyed. And until next time, it's C4 saying peace out.